Thursday, I was in downtown. I had hit my financial institution, one of them, in person. Normally, you do everything now on, the computer. You can do almost everything. Not quite. And I had to go down there, and I parked on Washington Square, South Washington Square, the first block of it, okay, at about 4:05 in the afternoon. How many other cars were parked on that block of Washington? Zero. I was it. I looked around. I'm like, man, I better do something with the meter and plug them. There's going to be no other pickings out here for the folks who come through and give, parking tickets. There was no one. I mean, it's just like, the Lansing rapture occurred. And now we're a year plus into this pandemic. You wonder at some point, when will workers come back into downtown? When will companies have the ability to, get back into their workspaces and collaborate minus a Zoom call? The folks who are backing Reopen Michigan Safely are wondering the same thing, and they're wondering even more after a pronouncement by the governor this week. Rich Studley is the CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. He's one of those who's pushing back, and he's on the other end of my line. Good morning. Welcome back. It's been a while.
Good morning, Dave. Great to talk to you. And yes, we think it's time to reopen Michigan safely.
Tell me what that means today versus maybe 6 months ago. I mean, we were hoping for a vaccine then, but our numbers weren't real high. Some people were starting to filter back. And now we've got this other wave that really has people worried just because the numbers are quite large.
It's understandable that every Michigander should continue to be concerned about COVID-19. I serve on the governor's advisory commission regarding vaccines. Yes, cases are up. We're in a race between vaccines and the variants. We believe at the Michigan Chamber it's important for every Michigander to seriously consider taking safe and effective vaccines. We are making progress in the fight against COVID-19. If there's one thing that responsible employers across the Lansing area and across the state have learned in the past year, it's how to reopen safely to protect the health and safety of their employees and employers. And the situation you described in Lansing, downtown Lansing, is occurring across the state in central business districts, in small cities, medium-sized cities, large cities. The governor's regulatory approach on COVID-19, the ban on office work, is turning downtowns like Lansing into ghost towns. Despite the very best efforts of small business owners and other companies and employees to remain open, we're concerned that the governor's arbitrary and unilateral decision to extend the office ban for another 6 months is going to be a devastating body blow, really, to many businesses that are still struggling to survive.
So, Rich, let me ask you this. And again, I have never seen on a weekday downtown that empty. I've seen more people around on a Sunday morning, frankly, than I saw at 4:05 on a Thursday afternoon. But be that as it may, why do you think the governor extended here? But she has not come down from top-down kind of decision-making and implementation in some of the other areas she did before. Why was this one chosen and other ones they've kind of backed off? What do you think?
There's an old Japanese saying that if you think of yourself as a hammer, the rest of the world looks like a nail. And imposing these kinds of regulations on businesses is something the government can do relatively easier, and the governor faces difficult choices in many areas. We get that. But the original order banning office work was created over 6 months ago when times were quite different. We know how to operate safely. We encourage employees and employers to wear masks, wash their hands. But what we're seeing is that social distancing is becoming social isolation with really devastating impacts on communities across the state. The challenge is the governor said she was going to extend this rule. The administration did receive some pushback. They created a work group. And then the governor announced at a news conference that she had decided to extend the work rule anyways. It's clear that the working group wasn't a serious effort to listen to the concerns of the
it took you guys by surprise, didn't it? You were surprised.
Yes, we're extremely disappointed with this action, especially to have it announced at a news conference and have the new proposed rule not available for another day. If you look at the new rule that has been proposed now, it is unworkable. It is
Why?
A rule that could remain in place indefinitely. The governor has said...
Well, you said unworkable. What makes it specifically unworkable? Tell me what that is.
The challenge we're hearing from members across the state is that, we've had conference calls for 10, 20, 30 years. There's a reason businesses don't operate only by conference call. There are employees who need and want to go back to work.
Yeah.
If you're involved in engineering, design, customer service, and innovation, teamwork and the spontaneous creativity that comes when you bring employees together is missing. There are jobs that can't be done by working remotely. The challenge with the new proposed rule is, in some ways, it's worse than the old rule. It actually requires employers to promote, not just allow, but promote working from home. That, as you mentioned at the beginning of this interview, will have a devastating impact on cities like Lansing. The governor seems very reluctant to call state employees back to work. The governor seems very reluctant to ask teachers to return to the classroom. And our reading of the rule that was made available just yesterday is that there is no sunset date. So the governor wants to turn a temporary emergency rule into a permanent feature.
Something that's being expanded more than just kicked down the road as is status quo. Let me ask you this, though. When people have pushed back, like yourself and others from your side of the fence, they've said there's no data out there that supports the idea of outbreaks in a work setting, in an office setting, et cetera. Well, how do we know that if offices have been closed for a year, by and large? If there's no outbreak, yeah, because they've been closed. But how do we know that the situation won't turn that way?
We do look very closely at the health data that the administration provides, Michigan-specific data. What that data clearly shows is that the largest number of outbreaks are, for the most part, related to middle school and high school activities, social activities, and sports. Even before COVID, there just aren't a lot of high school and middle school students wandering around the workplace. The workplaces are typically populated by adults who are older, and where businesses have been allowed to operate, the safety protocols, wear a mask, maintain social distancing, wash your hands are in place, they're followed rigorously, and they're working. All of the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services data shows that the sources of outbreaks continue to be in education, they continue to be in social gatherings, they continue to be in long-term care facilities, and those are not office facilities. The workplace is really quite different.
Rich Studley is the CEO of the Michigan Chamber, part of the Reopen Michigan Safely campaign. They're definitely pushing back on this. The governor, Rich, at her media gaggle on Monday, also said she saw this as a way to transition to getting people back to the office. From your standpoint, did you see anything that involved transitioning here? No.
If anything, she doubled down on the previous order banning office work, and the new proposed order will continue indefinitely. It has no sunset date or expiration date.
All right. What were your thoughts this week when you saw that Michigan was also taking the FDA and CDC advice and pausing the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, even though there have only been 6 cases of these blood clots nationally to go with the better part of 7 million shots in arms?
As a person of faith, I believe that any death is a tragedy, is a loss, and so I would never minimize the loss of a single life. But when you look at the numbers and understand that we're a country with over 300 million people, and we're talking about less than a dozen deaths, I think it's very important to put those tragic accidents into perspective. There was a similar discussion in the European Union a few weeks ago.
AstraZeneca, right. Mm-hmm. Right. Yep.
Went through the data and are now allowing it. I think we have to do our very best to have trust and confidence in the CDC, but especially the FDA. Every step in the manufacture of vaccines was accelerated, but not skipped. And so I hope these numbers are an anomaly. And the J&J vaccine is potentially very helpful in expanding our efforts because it requires only one shot.
One shot.
The good news is the Pfizer vaccine is made right here in Michigan, and there are ample supplies of Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. So the recommendation is that if you had an appointment this week to get a vaccine, please go. Any of the vaccines that are available are better than no vaccine at all. And,
and the good news we've had here is they've canceled no appointments that we know of so far in the Tri-County area for vaccines, and hopefully supply will be up. We don't have any guarantee of that from the federal government. That's been part of the back and forth with the governor and the White House, which was somewhat unexpected, but it's occurred and been happening. Rich Studley is the CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. They are pushing back here on the idea of staying remote longer. They want to get people back in offices and do it safely, they say. Rich, I appreciate you coming on today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
All right, take care. We're back, 1320 WILS.